I have gotten so many requests to do a video on zodiacal releasing. And guys, here it is. That's what we're going to talk about in today's presentation. So I will start this video by reminding you I am not a traditional Hellenistic astrologer. I am a modern predictive astrologer. I am a modern counseling astrologer. I integrate traditional techniques in my practice very judiciously. It is not my primary focus. Having said that, I have had extensive training in Hellenistic techniques, in traditional techniques, in horary, electional techniques. And, just because I don't use something every day in my practice, we can't specialize in everything. You have to choose what you specialize in as astrologers, but it is always a good idea to keep learning and to keep growing. And I hope that this video inspires you to do that if you are an astrology enthusiast, an astrology student. A few years ago, I wanted to learn Hellenistic astrology. I wanted to see what the fuss was all about and to see if it could fill in some holes in my astrological understanding. And sure enough, it did. In fact, it was quite astounding. I credit Chris Brennan's course. That's the course that I took. And here's his book. Okay, so Hellenistic astrology. This book is going to be gold for you if you want to study Hellenistic astrology, specifically the Time Lord technique of zodiacal releasing or annual perfections. Get this book, digest it slowly, carefully, ideally alongside his course, which is an in-depth course. This is not my area of specialty. It is his. It is his life's work. So he should be your teacher or someone like him. There are other Hellenistic astrologers out there, fabulous ones. Do your research, hire the instructor that you resonate with. More book recommendations. Demetra George, Ancient Astrology, Volume 1, Volume 2. Guys, as you can see, this is an in-depth study. And I'm showing you these books because I want you to understand that this one video that I am giving you, it's not it. It is opening the door. It is something that you're going to chew on and realize there's so much more to this vast study. And I have to say that because I do not want anyone to watch this video and think that they're an expert on zodiacal releasing. Far from it. There is so much that I'm going to not cover, so much that I'm going to gloss over. I am going to discuss in this video, just so you know what to expect. I am going to discuss the concept of zodiacal releasing, what it is, how we can use it. I'm going to talk about peak periods. I am going to only talk about releasing from the live spirit, which is focusing on career and life direction. I'm not going to focus on the other lots. I am going to talk about the loosing of the bond, and I'm going to demonstrate all of this using my chart, and I will show you how to look up these calculations on SolarFire software. If this video sounds like it's for you, then stick around. I don't know how long this presentation is going to be, but I'm going to take my time with it because it is, like I said, a bear of a study. But I think it's really worth learning. I do. Even just because I don't use it every single day for my clients doesn't mean I don't think it's valuable. It is. I have studied it well for myself in my own life, in my own chart, and for people who are very close to me. I have done this for select coaching clients who request it. It is fascinating. So it is worth your time and attention in studying. Now, if you follow my work, I use the Placidus house system. In ancient astrology, particularly when you are using ancient Time Lord techniques, you must use the whole sign house system. So for this presentation, of course, I'm being true to the craft and using the whole sign house system. And I'm going to show you that in a minute. Uh, I'm using SolarFire software because this software is the only paid software that I have that allows you to calculate zodiacal releasing. You can do this for free on astro.com or astroseek.com, but I highly recommend investing in astrology software if you want to do this. It's a lot easier and very clear when you're using your software. And you can, if you are a student of astrology who's interested in purchasing SolarFire software, you can get a 15% discount by entering my coupon code InsightAstro15 at checkout when you go to alabe.com to purchase the SolarFire software. That coupon code and the link is in the description box below if you're interested. So let's start with what is zodiacal releasing. Listen, I am going to freely quote the astrologer who has made it his life's work because he literally wrote the book. He wrote the book. So give me a moment and let me see if I can get to the page where he defines zodiacal releasing. So this is actually chapter 18 of his book. And I'm going to read this directly, quoting Chris Brennan. One of the most impressive and powerful Time Lord techniques that has been recovered from the Hellenistic tradition so far is known today as zodiacal releasing. This technique only survives in the work of Vedius Valens, and when he first introduces it, he calls it a powerful or potent technique. Indeed, it is easily the most remarkable one I've found, says Chris Brennan. The best analogy for describing this technique is that it divides the native's entire life up into different chapters and paragraphs, as if life were a book. And more specifically, the technique will identify some of the most important chapters in your life with respect to different topics, such as career or health, and it can also provide information about the quality of those chapters. And this is an advanced Time Lord technique, which means, and it is a complicated one, which means that it has the power to tell you when your birth chart promise is being woken up to manifest certain potentials. So zodiacal releasing, how we even calculate this, it is based on the lots. The lot of fortune is our starting point. This is the part of the video that I am not even going to discuss with you. Calculations, how to do it, all of that. Take a class. You can learn that on your own. What I am going to do is bring up my birth chart and show you what my chart looks like in the whole sign house system. So give me a minute. I'm going to have to keep sharing my screen and then stopping the share because I want to make sure that you are seeing what I am bringing up in the video. So right now, you all should be able to see my birth chart cast for the whole sign house system. And it is cast using a traditional chart, which does not have the outer planets, the modern planets. It only has the traditional planets. And I am showing this to you for a few reasons. You have to start with the nativity. You have to identify the lot of fortune. My lot of fortune is 1 degree of Libra. This is very sensitive to a correct birth time. If my birth time were off by, let's say, 10 minutes, my lot of fortune would be in Virgo and not Libra. And that would change everything about my zodiacal releasing periods, including my peak periods. But if you have an accurately timed birth chart, you have a reliable part of fortune to work with, then you can move forward using this technique. So what we have to identify once we look at our lot of fortune is whatever mode that is in, we want to look to see what planets in the birth chart are angular to fortune. And we also want to determine certain things like, is this a night chart? Is this a day chart? Which planet is the most benefic for the native? Which planet is the most malefic? So here we have the lot of fortune is ruled by Venus, and Venus happens to be in Aries, which is angular to fortune, right? And that's a benefic, and it is supposedly the best benefic in my chart because I have what is known as a night chart. My sun is below the horizon. So we know that Venus is here, and that's a good thing, right? But we're not finished. If you look down here, you will actually see that both Saturn and Mars, both malefics, are also in a cardinal sign, Cancer, which means they are both also angular from fortune in a square. This particular nativity will tell you that the lot of fortune is complicated now. It is not going to just offer the best of the best or the worst of the worst when it is activated. And this is something I really want to make you understand and deeply look at in a birth chart before you move forward with looking at those zodiacal releasing periods. Because when we get to something called a peak period in your life, which is when one of the levels, one of the chapters is in a sign angular to fortune, just because it is called a peak period does not automatically mean positive or negative. It means peak period. It will be the most active, busy period of your life, for better or for worse. And in this particular nativity, we are seeing a clear indication that when I am in a peak period, I will have the best of the best times of my life and the most tragic, difficult ones of my life. Please remember this because when I leave this chart, I'm going to pull up the zodiacal releasing, show you how to do that, explain it, and then talk about the real life experiences that I had. I'm going to talk about two of them. So let's continue with looking at this nativity. The lot of fortune here is showing as being in the sign Libra. Libra is the sign of my descendant, my marriage sector. Venus is the ruler. The lot of fortune is angular to Venus. That does suggest maybe something good will be happening connected to Venus ruled matters, partnership, okay, in particular. And then we have Saturn and Mars in the whole sign fourth house, angular. Difficult aspect here. So there's also going to be a lot of difficulty connected to domestic matters. That will not be easy. In fact, we have two malefics here. That's going to be difficult. I also want to point out something on another topic. There is a benefic in my chart that is super beautiful. Jupiter. Jupiter, although I do not have a day chart, in this birth chart, Jupiter ends up being a very special planet for me. It acts as a stronger benefic than my insect benefic, which is Venus, because here's Venus in detriment. But here we have Jupiter in domicile, and Jupiter is making glorious aspects in the birth chart. It's actually helping to ease some of that stress connected to Mars and Saturn because of the trine, the whole sign trine. So I wanted to mention that because that comes into things a little bit later on. Okay. So to recap, first thing you're going to do is look at your birth chart, identify your lot of fortune. What mode is it in? Then you're going to identify any planets that are angular to fortune, and you are going to determine the quality of those planets. What do they connect to in the birth chart? Is it positive? Is it negative? Is it a mix? And there's no room for psychological astrology here, guys. We are not using a technique that responds to psychological astrology. This is ancient Hellenistic astrology. This is pure predictive insight. So you have to shut off your psychological astrology brain, evolutionary astrology brain, the part of you that wants to say, oh, we have all this free will and we can direct our life. Listen, you're dealing with a different technique here, and you have to respect the technique. Otherwise, don't use it. So, this is objectively showing, based on the rules of the technique so far, that I will experience the best of the best and the worst of the worst connected to my life during my peak period. Saturn does rule my career, and that may also come into the picture. Okay. Okay. Sorry, guys. I had to respond to my son. He's taking care of something in my house for me. He was taking care, my driveway was getting sealed. See, I always have stuff going on, right? With my energy in the fourth house. All right. So now that you've done that for your chart, determined, maybe your lot of fortune connects only to beautiful Jupiter and Venus, or one of them, and doesn't connect to any malefic. Or maybe you have an even more difficult case scenario than I do here, where it's only connecting to malefics. If that's the case, your peak period is going to be objectively quite difficult. But it's not going to be quite difficult for the entire stretch of time. Okay, that's another thing, and that's what we're going to explore next. So let me stop this share. And now what I'm going to do is hopefully show you on the screen how to calculate your zodiacal releasing periods on Solar Fire software. So here we go again. Let's try this again. We're going to do another share. And now I am taking you to the main page of Solar Fire, which is right here. And what we're going to do is see on the top here, there are all sorts of cool buttons. The cool button that we're going to press is, let me actually highlight it for you so that you know. It is going to be this one right here. Okay, so I'm circling it. And let me now press it. That is called chart reports and tabulations. Okay, so you didn't see me press it. What I have to do is stop the share again. And I'm sorry, guys, it's just the way that the Zoom, works here. I'm going to stop the share, and then you're going to see what happens when I click on that button, which is chart reports and tabulations. So here we go again. I'm going to reshare my screen. And now you are going to see this. This is what chart reports and tabulations brings up. And this is quite a busy thing here. So the first thing that you're going to see is Maria whole sign natal chart. These are just my chart points. That's not what I'm interested in right now. I want you to go on the right-hand side here. You see how that's reports? We're under the reports options. We don't want reports. We want tabulations. So click on tabulations. And then you're going to scroll down until you get to zodiacal releasing right here. You're going to click on zodiacal releasing, and your zodiacal releasing is going to show up. Now, I'm going to stop the show one more time just to make sure that you guys can see the zodiacal releasing that has come up. Okay, so hopefully this is all working out. Now, here we are, zodiacal releasing. This is what you're going to see on the chart reports and tabulations. For the purposes of this presentation, we are releasing from the lot of spirit. So what you need to do is go down here, see zodiacal start, spirit, fortune, then it has all of the signs. You can release for the sign that your lot of Eros is in, if you wanted to. And Eros talks about relationship potential. My lot of Eros is in Sagittarius. You have to know what lot your lot of Eros is in to do that, but that's one of the uses of the signs here. We're not doing that. We're just going to do the lot of spirits, which talks about career and life direction. And now we want to see, when is Maria going to be in a peak period? And there are 4 levels here that you can see. These 4 levels correspond to the chapters. And you can think of these chapters as level 1, it's the big, like part 1, part 2, part 3 of your life saga. Level 2, and that lasts for many years, okay? Many, many years, depending on which sign the level is in. Then level 2 is going to be a year, 18 months. Okay, so it's going to be many months that level 2 is in. Level 3 becomes several weeks. Level 4 is a matter of days. So you can really get some granular information with these subperiods. But what's important here with these levels? What we want to identify is when on any of these levels, you are in a period that is angular to fortune. When you are in a period angular to fortune in your chart, you're in a peak period. The most important peak period happens on the level 1. And you can see here in red, it will tell you that my current period, the red is the current periods that you're in real time. So on December 17th, 2000, I entered a Capricorn period, level 1, which is a peak period because my lot of fortune is in Libra. And so as we release from spirit, level 1, what it does, level 1 starts at the sign that spirit is in my birth chart. So from my birth chart, my lot of spirit is in Scorpio. That's why when I was born, level 1 started at Scorpio. And then it goes in order from there. So that's how your zodiacal releasing is set up. I'm going to come back to this current peak period in a minute, but I'm going to go back in time first. And I'm going to tell you about something that happened in my life before I was in this peak period, actually. Before I was in this peak period in 1989, I was in a Sagittarius period. Now, Sagittarius in my chart is angular to my Jupiter in Pisces, which is my most beautiful benefic in my chart. So I was not in a peak period at that time, but I was in a very beneficial period for my chart because this level was angular to Jupiter in domicile, and Jupiter is doing nothing but beautiful things in my chart. Okay. So what could have happened? Well, now I'm in this big level 1 period from 1989 to 2000, December of 2000. And I was quite young, but when I entered my level 2 Capricorn period, which is angular to fortune in my chart, that put me in a level 2 temporary peak period, which was going to activate the best of the best, the worst of the worst in my life. But because here I was in this Sagittarius period on level 1, angular to my benefic Jupiter and Pisces, maybe it wasn't going to be so bad at this time. And in fact, we keep going now to level 3. And I'm going to take you to this period of time, July 25th, 1991. It's a level 3 Cancer period, which is also a peak period. And you're going to see an L in parentheses there. An L is what you will see during a loosing of the bond. And what is A loosing of the bond. What is this? Okay, hang on. I'm gonna read you your little definition here. Valens explains at one point that on any subperiod level, if the cycle comes back to the original sign where it started at the beginning of the general period, then instead of starting the cycle over again, the subperiod jumps to the opposite sign from the general period and then begins moving forward again from there. Valens refers to this as the loosing of the bond or the breaking of the sequence. The loosing of the bond only occurs on the general level in signs longer than 17 and a half years, since it is approximately how long it takes for all level 2 subperiods to be completed if you add them up. Every sign has a certain amount of years that's going to stay in a level in a period. So that's what he's referring to there. And I'm not reviewing all that. So a loosing of the bond will only take place in the signs Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Capricorn, and Aquarius. In my research of zodiacal releasing from the lot of spirit, I have found that the loosing of the bond usually indicates a major transition in terms of the person's career and life direction. This is one of the stranger facets of the techniques, but it is also one of the more notable and reliable. I agree, because here's what happened in my life at this loosing of the bond. And specifically, go to level 4, which is a period that only lasts days, and go to this September 7th period here that also has an L. So basically, loosing of the bond. You see how right before the July 25th period, we're in Sagittarius. How did we go to Sagittarius and to Cancer? Because this is the breaking of the sequence. Instead of it going to Capricorn, it jumped back to Cancer. Okay? That is what the loosing of the bond is. Now, on September 7th, 1991, until September 13th, 1991, I was under a loosing of the bond in level 4 as well. So, to recap, on my level 1, I was not in a peak period, but I was in a beneficial period for me because this was angular to my Jupiter in Pisces. Level 2, peak period. Level 3, peak period with a loosing of the bond. Level 4, peak. So between September 7th and September 13th, I met the man. I was 17 years old. I met the man I would later marry. This man turned my whole life around. Okay. I had a Cinderella story. I was 17 years old. I grew up in a working class family, Italian family. My father emigrated from Italy when he was 17, actually. And my family has a lot of values, a lot of family connections, but material comforts was not something that I grew up with. In fact, I can tell you stories about growing up and experiencing times when my mother would choose between paying the electric bill or buying us food. Many stories, many, many stories. But my father always worked very hard. It was just difficult for us. And so I grew up not with a lot materially. I met this man. I was set up on a blind date by my cousin. And I was only 17, he was 19. And at first, I didn't really like him. But my cousin said, Maria, dating is like baseball. Instead of 3 strikes, you're out, 3 strikes, and maybe he's in. You have to give it a few chances. And I did that. Our first date was between the September 7th and September 13th period. And I continued to date him. And within a couple of months, I fell in love with him. And he changed my life because financially, his family was extremely wealthy. And I ended up marrying him in 1997. And we had 2 children. And I wasn't an astrologer back then. I was in school studying to become a social worker. And I ended up dropping out and not completing my master's degree. I didn't find astrology until I was a mother and I didn't start studying it formally until after I had my daughter. So I started studying astrology formally for certification during my first Saturn return when I was about 28. So at this time in my life, you could say my whole world changed because I my lifestyle changed, rags to riches, met the man that I fell in love with. He literally, it was a Cinderella story. He swept me off my feet and he opened up my life to possibilities that I wouldn't have had if I didn't meet him. So even though the marriage didn't last, that is true. And you can see this reflected in the zodiacal releasing. Now, this wonderful beneficial period lasted from 1989 to 2000. And then something changed. I entered my peak period on level 1. And now I no longer had the big picture level 1 benefit of Jupiter supporting me in Pisces. No, instead, now I went back to this nativity of angular to fortune. Yes, I have my Venus in Aries, but I also have Saturn and Mars in Cancer. So two malefics, one benefic, and the benefic, even though it's of the sect in favor, it's in detriment and it's squaring Saturn and Mars. So it's not so good in my chart, not at all. Well, here is what ended up happening. When, let me see, my divorce occurred during my level 1 peak period and my level 2 peak period in this time period. It was in 2011 that I got divorced, that it was finalized. So you could see that it was right there. So by this peak, by this period, I was divorced already by that loosing of the bond. But let me see. I believe the divorce happened at this time. It was right around here. I can't remember the date right now. So I was in a level 1 and a level 2 peak period, but level 3 and 4 were not. So that divorce happened. It was a horrific battle that began in 2007, actually. So I had my daughter in 2001. Okay. And then at this point, when we got to 2002, I started studying astrology more formally. I discovered astrology. I started studying it. I was trying to get a book published. It was a novel for fiction, and that didn't work. And then I kind of accidentally found astrology at that time. And it was right around here, actually. It was, I know that it was around my birthday that I had this first encounter. It was May 8th of 2002 that I had this encounter with an astrologer at a bookstore. And from that moment on, after my birthday, I went full on into astrology. And that changed my life direction completely. But then as time went on, I entered this stressful level 2 peak period. And it was between this time that my husband decided that he wanted a separation. He didn't ask for the separation until I'm trying to remember, guys. Give me a minute. I promise there's a point to all this. When did he ask for the separation? I think it was January of 2007. So it might have been, yeah, it actually was here. If it was January 2007. Yes, it was during a level 1 and a level 2 and a level 3. Oh my God, I just realized this. Look at that. It was actually during the loosing of the bond on level 4. Holy cow. That is when he asked for a separation. Look at this. This is real life astrology, guys. So the loosing of the bond on level 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I have noticed this, that the most significant life events for my life occur when this happens. Now, this peak period, but it's clearly not great, right? He asked for a divorce. He wanted a separation. And that occurred. And then we had a big divorce battle that lasted until I was in this peak period. Now, moving on, you can see life moved on, and you go here on level 2, and this is what I want to talk about next. This is big. When you have a loosing of the bond on level 2, it's even bigger of a deal than level 3 or level 4, because level 3, level 4 lasts for a shorter amount of time and it helps you refine timing for events. The level 2 is absolutely going to point to massive life changing energies. So, what happened in my life changed my life completely. And, you know, remember, it doesn't have to be about your career. It can be. One of those cycles I showed you was related to my career, but I was also a stay-at-home mom for many years. And this particular loosing of the bond right here had nothing to do with my career. It had everything to do with my living situation because the loosing of the bond occurred in Cancer, and my malefics, Saturn and Mars, are in Cancer in my fourth house. And what happened in 2019, while I was in this LB period, right? Because it doesn't end till May 6, 2020. What happened was my daughter was turning 18, and under my divorce agreement, I had to leave the marital residence. I was allowed to stay in the marital residence while my children were minors. And once my youngest reached 18, we had to move. That was a big deal because I was living in that house for, let's see, 23 years. 23 years of my life. That's a long time, right? And during this loosing of the bond, and that house my ex-husband owned, even though it was the marital residence and, you know, we bought it right before we got married. It wasn't in my name. Long story. I'm not going to dwell on it. But I had no right to stay in the house. So I had to leave the house. This uprooted our entire life. And this is what got me to move from Queens, New York, where I lived, where I grew up and lived all my life, to Long Island. And I was, over this time period, I created enough success as my in my career as an astrologer to save money and buy my own home. And during the loosing of the bond, I did that. I became a homeowner. And I know that a lot of you out there watching this own homes. And that's not a huge life-changing thing for you. It's a milestone, it's a stepping stone. But for me, it was probably one of the greatest achievements of my entire life because it not only symbolized my personal empowerment, but it got me out of prison. It got me out of a prison situation in a home that definitely wasn't a home, but I had to live there. And that occurred during this loosing of the bond. And it was so interesting. I closed on the house sometime in March. Okay, so I started doing extensive renovations right after for 3 months. We moved into the house on June 23rd. And you can see that I was in a peak period on all 4 levels on the day that we moved in to our home, June 23rd. This really is testimony, guys, that for me, because my peak period is a combination of malefics and benefics, it was going to be both the best times in my life, the worst times in my life. The very best time in my life, however, was not when I was in a peak period, because my peak period is complicated. It was when I was in a period angular to my Jupiter placement. And I need you guys to understand this because every chart has a unique, uh, a whole unique story with zodiacal releasing. So I really hope that this presentation helped to shed some light and understanding on tracking zodiacal releasing periods, how to qualify when they are positive, when they are going to be negative, or when they're going to be a mixture of both, and how to really consolidate that timing. And one thing that I will say about zodiacal releasing as a modern predictive astrologer, and this is just my humble professional opinion, it is very valuable. It is a powerful, valuable technique that really does point to these faded periods of life. But I don't think that I could have looked at those periods and made the specific predictions when I was looking at each of those periods for what happened, for what actually happened. And I think there are other predictive techniques that speak to that detail in a stronger way, like transits, like secondary progressions, like solar arc directions. Even annual perfections give you more detail and nuance with the specific storyline. The zodiacal releasing periods are the strength of it is to break down your life in chapters and have you see at a glance which chapters of your life are going to be the most significant for you. So please keep it in its context as you study zodiacal releasing. It is super powerful. I I'm glad I learned it. I'm glad that I use it judiciously. And I hope that this video taught you something. Please let me know in the comments. I'm really curious, especially for those of you who work with Hellenistic astrology, who use zodiacal releasing. Did this teach you something? Was this helpful? If you're brand new to zodiacal releasing, did it open your eyes to this technique in a way that you didn't understand before this video? Let me know. All right, let's have a conversation in the comments, and I will see you at the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye.